Admiral Kirby, fantastic to catch up with you, sir. Busy weekend, I'm sure, for you and the administration. Let's get straight into it. We've heard from Iran, at least they've indicated the matter can be deemed concluded. I think we all want to know, Admiral Kirby, whether Israel has indicated the same thing.
I won't speak for the Israelis. I think you can understand that. I believe the War Cabinet is still deliberating and making their decisions. The President had a very good conversation with the Prime Minister right after or towards the end of the attacks on Saturday night. And the President was very direct that this was a huge success, that Israel can be proud that it doesn't stand alone and that it has superior military capability. Iran utterly failed in what they were trying to achieve, and that success alone sends a strong message to Iran and to the region about Israel's place there.
Sir, could we just define success? How can we define the weekend's events as a success, to see the first direct strikes coming from Iranian soil on Israel? How is that a success in any way, shape or form?
Yeah, let's talk about what didn't happen. Hardly any damage, and the only impacts were to an air base in central Israel. No real casualties except, sadly, a young civilian girl was critically injured. And the vast majority, as the IDF have said, 99% of what Iran threw up in the air, drones and missiles, never landed. Either failed or actually got shot down. So that's what didn't happen. And what did happen was Israel proved it has superior military capability, and just as critically, they don't stand alone, that the United States stands with them. I think people are maybe not cognizant of the fact that the President put U.S. forces in harm's way to help defend Israel. For the first time, American fighter pilots in the air shooting things down that were heading towards Israel. And they were extraordinarily successful in doing so. I think that's significant.
You're talking about a successful defense. I think a lot of people also focused on the unsuccessful deterrence. The President said don't, and they did. And we're trying to work out, Admiral Kirby, in what way the U.S. is able to influence Iranian behavior.
Well, the President pre-positioned military forces in the region, which allowed for that unprecedented successful defense. The President met with the G7 leaders yesterday to talk about a unified diplomatic response and to consider other options and alternatives to try to hold Iran accountable for what it did on Saturday night. Iran is increasingly isolated in the world, certainly in the region, and Israel has proven that it has friends.
If Israel does not respond, is the new status quo that Iran can strike Israel from its own soil and there won't be a retaliation?
Again, I can't speak to that, Anne-Marie. That's going to be up to the Prime Minister and the War Cabinet to make those decisions. We respect that, that it's a sovereign nation and they have to make those decisions.
There's lots of reporting that the Biden administration that was verbalizing to the Israelis that they do not support a counter-strike. Isn't that, in a sense, taking one of those tools out of the toolbox and brandishing it to the world?
The tools that we took out of the toolbox were pretty significant on Saturday night, Anne-Marie. Ballistic missile destroyers in the Eastern Med helping shoot down ballistic missiles, fighter aircraft in the air, other partners participating. There was a lot of tools in the toolbox, and that there's no question that Iran recognizes the coalition that was put together to help Israel defend itself. Again, I can't speak for what either side will do going forward. All I can do is speak for President Biden as Commander-in-Chief. He has since October 7th, and he will continue going forward, making sure that we are meeting our commitments to Israel, but just as critically that we're meeting our commitments to our own national security interests in the region, making sure we have the resources in place to protect our troops, our facilities, and the missions that we're conducting there in the Middle East.
We've had 60 tons of arsenal fired upon Israel directly from Iran. We've had 6 months of Iranian-backed Houthis hitting as well, trying to hit even U.S. vessels in the Red Sea and disrupting global trade. We also had an uptick of uranium enrichment by Iran. So to get to this deterrence, what is the U.S. willing to do? We have sanctions in place. Is the United States willing to enforce them?
We have been enforcing sanctions. I mean, my goodness, in the 3.5 years of this administration, we have implemented more than 50 sanction regimes targeting more than 500 entities and individuals. And again, I won't preview coming sanctions or anything like that, but I can tell you that additional sanctions are certainly not off the table in terms of holding Iran accountable. And take a look at the additional military resources that President Biden has added to the region, even before October 7th. This is something that he's been keenly focused on. And as we saw from Saturday night, Iran is increasingly isolated on the world stage. They are increasingly making it harder for anybody in the international community to be sympathetic to any of their inimical interests there. So, again, I think we've done a lot. We'll continue to look at our options going forward, and I suspect that we'll continue to hold Iran properly accountable.
Admiral Kirby, how are they isolated? They had a call with the Saudis. They're sending all their oil to China. They're sending Shahad drones to Russia. In March, Iranian oil output hit a 5-year high. Where is the enforcement?
There is enforcement of the sanctions, Anne-Marie. Again, this is one of the most heavily sanctioned countries in the world. And we're going to continue to look at our options going forward to hold them properly accountable. The sanctions are certainly not off the table. Neither is going to making sure that we've got the capabilities in the region, and we do, to thwart some of their destabilizing activity. You talked about the uranium enrichment. When the previous administration pulled out of the Iran deal, it vastly accelerated the degree to which Iran could start to spin up their centrifuges and get closer to some sort of breakout capability. The president obviously tried. We tried, but Iran was not negotiating in good faith to get back into that Iran deal. But he also made clear that we will not allow Iran to achieve a nuclear weapons capability. We prefer to do that through diplomacy. But if not, we've got other options available to us.
What's diplomacy? Bob Malley, the Iranian envoy, is still under investigation. Who is leading these diplomatic efforts?
As I said, the diplomatic efforts to get them back into the Iran deal are no longer being pursued because Iran wasn't negotiating in good faith, which is why we're going to make sure we have other options available to us to prevent them from achieving a nuclear weapons capability.
Admiral, one question, and Anne-Marie did touch on this question around what the response could be to Iran seizing a vessel in the Straits of Hormuz, the idea of freedom of the seas. What's the U.S.'s response to that, given the fact that a lot of companies have already started to rejigger some of their trade routes and bake in extra costs as a result?
Yeah, I had a little trouble hearing you over the lawnmower there, but I think I got the gist of the question. We certainly condemn this most recent maritime attack. This is a tactic that the Iranians have used in the past. We have, when able, been able to interdict, been able to try to thwart other such maritime attacks, not all of them, of course. And we are also making a concerted effort over time, and we have been somewhat successful in intercepting goods that the Iranians have been trying to ship by sea to some of their proxies in Iraq and Syria, and certainly the Houthis.
Admiral, one thing that a lot of companies are saying, and a lot of executives, is that they do have to make contingency plans because they aren't sure that there can be such safety, and you've seen insurance costs go up. Is it appropriate for the U.S., for Israel, to more directly respond to Iran at some point, just not now?
Again, I can't speculate about future operations one way or another, or future decisions that we might have to make. The president has been clear. We're going to hold Iran accountable for their destabilizing activities. He's also been clear that we don't want a war with Iran. We're not looking for another war in the Middle East or to see the conflict that's currently underway in Gaza broadened or deepened across the region. Now, we'll have to see how things unfold over the next coming days here. But we don't want a war with Iran, and everything the president has been doing since the 7th of October has been designed to try to bring the tensions down and to make sure that the United States is best postured to defend our interests there in the region.